joining us this evening. My name is Mitch Kagan, and I'm a board member for Old Pueblo Archaeology Center in Tucson, Arizona, a nonprofit organization that is bringing you this third Thursday Food for Thought presentation. For tonight's third Thursday program, Old Pueblo is delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. José Luis Punzo Díaz. A full accounting of Dr. Punzo's background and accomplishments would easily exhaust the time allotted for his entire presentation. However, a short background review is offered. Dr. Punzo obtained his PhD in archaeology from the Escuela Nacional de Antropología y Historia in Mexico City. He has been a researcher in archaeology for the Instituto Nacional de Antropología y Historia, Mexico's Institute of Anthropology and History, since 2004. A resident of Morelia, Michoacán, Mexico, he is zooming in from there this evening, which we greatly appreciate. Over the last 3 decades, Dr. Punzo has conducted multiple archaeology projects in Mexico's states of Durango, Chihuahua, and Michoacán. He has been responsible for the museum in Paquimé, Chihuahua, and for archaeological zones like the Ferrería in Durango, Tzintzuntzan, and Tingambato in Michoacán. He is experienced in the uses of drones, the Geographic Information System, LiDAR, and digital applications for archaeology and cultural patrimony. Dr. Punzo's principal research interests are the relations between the U.S. Southwest and Mesoamerica, metallurgy, and the archaeology of West Mexico. Dr. Punzo has previously presented on varied topics, many of which can be found online. In the summer of 2022, Dr. Punzo was the University Indian Ruin Scholar right here in the University of Arizona. In Old Pueblo Archaeology's program this evening, he will discuss and interpret how the pre-contact period exchange networks for copper artifacts developed and changed over time, with special emphasis on the relationships between the southwestern United States and Mesoamerica. Somos muy afortunados de tener este maestro, este experto, con nosotros esta noche. Bienvenidos. Welcome, Dr. Punzo. Please.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Mitch. First of all, I want to thank Al and Old Pueblo Archaeology Center for the invitation. It's an honor to be here in this important forum with all the people now that it's online. And well, also I want to thank Mitch for hosting the session. And well, I will share my screen. And if there's any problem on the Q&A, you can put some checks or something. If something doesn't work, pretty okay, but let's try. Okay. So now we are with everything okay. Yes?
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect. Okay. So well, today I want to present the copper a chat about the copper networks into the U.S. Southwest and Mexican Northwest and Mesoamerica. I work copper and the casting of copper. It's on my family because I came from a little town in Michoacán that everybody do copper smithing. So since I started my career as an archaeologist, I always thought that I want to do this. So I have a lot of time doing this little research with a lot of points and a lot of things. And now I want to present you a big overview of the metallurgy in West Mexico, that is where it's developed in Northern America. But also, on the other hand, I want to present you for the first time, actually, the network analysis that we are now doing in different periods of time, and how these network interact in all West Mexico into the Southwest. So let's start with the general part. So first of all, as a lot of people that probably is in the audience know, the origin of the metalwork, it's not in the Mesoamerican area. So the origin of the metalwork in the Americas starts, well, of course, we have the parts in the Great Lake area, but it's some native copper thing. But the first casting of metalwork starts in Ecuador. Now, the most old dates that we have is in Putuxio in Ecuador, so around like 3,400 years before present. So there's pretty old, and and we can see some of the furnaces that was found in that area, and that was more related to the smelting of gold at that time. But also because, well, gold is easiest to cast to melt than copper, that have a lot of different process associated. So but in the other hand, there's another places like Guanacarin in the Bolivian Altiplano, that it's also dated around 3,000 years old. So, and that with the slags of copper. So that, and I wanted to say that because all the tradition and the knowledge associated for smelting copper, it's a pretty old thing in the Americas, in South America especially. And as we're gonna see, it came into Mesoamerica as a technological package. So we will get on that a little bit later in the presentation. So well, here we can see some of the another furnaces found in Chile, but in the general overview in South America, there are like two big metallurgic traditions. We have in one hand the hammer, the hammer one, that it's more related to the areas of areas of Peru and Ecuador, as the mask that we see on the left side. It's a lot of hammering, all these thin sheets that they do, and a lot of cuts and everything, and they do these marvelous pieces, very famous on gold, that we can see in the different museums around the world, but of course a lot in Peru and in the museums in Ecuador, like this gold mask of Inti gold mask. And the other great tradition, it's more related to the Colombia area, that it's more about the lost wax process. And well, we can see one of the examples here of a Tairona bat god from the northern part of Colombia, that it's different processing, and we will see it a little bit in the presentation. So here there are some examples of the Peruvian hammering tradition, that it's very, 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 very nice objects, very well done, and it's a little bit different than the ones in Colombia, but of course in both sides exist both processes. And these are some of the examples in Colombia that you can see, for example, in the Museo del Oro in Bogota, that have these the boat, this the little barcaza that they call it, the muisca barcaza, that we can see in the left part, or different objects that we can see. But now getting into the Mesoamerican thing, now we know that the metallurgy appears in Mesoamerica, and there's a big discussion about that, if it's 680 or a little bit later than that. That I think it's a little bit later than that. And but now we know that there are the big possibility of going in boats by the currents that comes into West Mexico from the shores of Ecuador. Dewon and Hosler in 2008 uh, do some analysis on that, and they estimated that in between 6 to 8 weeks, you can cover the 3,000 kilometers on that. So it's a real possibility. There's a lot of different connections between West Mexico mostly and the Colombian and Ecuador area, like the shaft tombs, a lot of construction types with adobe, and well, different things, and of course, copper and the metallurgy. It's one of the most important ones. So with the work that I was doing was exactly to review all the data, all the radiocarbon data that we have available for sites that were related to the copper appearance in Mesoamerica, and we do some analysis, some statistical analysis to find out. And now we know that the pretty early dates that was normally that you can find it in most of the old literature about metallurgy in West Mexico, it goes around 600. But now we know that a lot of those dates are was wrong at the time, or they are dating different contexts. And now we are pretty sure that the metallurgy starts later in time in Mesoamerica, and probably more related to the 800s to 900s, as we can see in the charts. Uh, and of course, the real expansion of metallurgy in West Mexico, it starts after 900. Uh, so very important thing on this, it's like as I said, it came as a technical package. So the develop was very quickly and spreads very for a long way, and probably enter with networks that already exist with different types of materials that goes into the southwest. So okay, so now we know. And the other important thing that we need to figure out for this presentation, it's like there are two big periods for the metallurgy. Those were presented by Dr. Dorothy Hosler. I move a little bit the dates as I was saying, but the important thing is the first part of this network of copper starts with expansion in the Aztlan tradition between 900 to 1300s, and then will be another big change before 1300s, where a lot of things happens in Mesoamerica, as we're gonna see, and a lot of the networks change and disrupt in a very different ways. So okay, let's continue. One of the important things also is this presentation also was part of a big research project that I conduct with Dr. Ben Nelson of the Arizona State University. And so we have a collaboration between INA, the National Institute in Mexico, and ASU in Arizona. and we have students from both countries working for a couple of years, trying to setting up this big database. And one of the objects that we are analyzing were copper. We have analyzed with a project over 5,400 objects, as you see in the screen, and we analyze 132 sites with these metal objects, and we analyze every single context of for any of those materials. So all the presentation, it's based on this big work that we do together with the Dr. Nelson. Okay, so what we need for the metallurgy, for the starting of metallurgy. First of all, we need copper. and copper it's not everywhere, as you know. So one of the important things for that was that in West Mexico, exactly where the Balsas River, that it's a big river that cross all central Mexico and goes into the ocean, to the Pacific Ocean, between the states of Michoacan and Guerrero. All that belt, it's calling the copper belt, as you can see in the map. So every sign is one copper mine. And these areas that was encircled, probably you can see my mouse. Mitch, you can say if you can see it, or Al.
Yes.
Yes,
we can see it.
yes, we can see it.
Only for pointing. Actually, I will put my laser, virtual laser thing. Okay, now.
There we go. Good.
Here we go. Okay, so all this area, it's where I work projects, and it's covered completely with copper mines. But now it's a very difficult area for working now in Mexico. So this area that I work on, it's called the Tierra Caliente in Michoacan and Guerrero. Unfortunately, today it's an area very difficult to access because of security problems. But well, as I told you, I'm from that area. Well, originally my family, so I've been able to move a lot of time over there and have the opportunity to record some very incredible archaeological sites on that area. So with that, of course, West Mexico have the largest copper deposits, or one of the largest copper deposits in Mexico. Of course, there are other ones close to the border of Arizona, but these ones are very accessible. And the other thing was very important for this growing of the metalwork was the existence of complex societies. So complex societies that can address all these technological knowledge for smelting the copper. And another very important thing, it's in the study that we made, it's like the copper on those areas are copper carbonates, such as malachite, for instance, and it's very easy to find in a very shallow pit or even in the surface sometimes. Actually, last week I was working on a site over there, and we found a place full of malachite on the surface. So it's today is still easy to find the copper ore. Another important thing that we found on this is like we have these grinding tables, as this one that we see here, to making the ore and all the stone axes and to make the powder. So this is another important thing for all the people that likes all this smelting copper, and they know that it's easy, or it's easiest to do the smelting of the copper carbonates, because but there are not that rich on copper. Sometimes it depends on the minerals, but also a lot of the coppers are copper sulfides, and the copper sulfides needs another processes involved to uh, to have the possibility to smelting. So it's so much difficult. You need to make another extra things to get off the sulfide. But even in pre-Hispanic times, we know that the people was exploding sulfides too. So in the analysis that we made, so that's an important thing because that talks about this technological knowledge, or very this well-developed technological knowledge that they have back in those days. So with that on mind, we start to making some different analysis. I do a lot of archaeometric analysis, and we work with a laboratory to do LIBS. It's laser induction breakdown spectroscopy in laboratory here in León, nearby Morelia. And we have the possibility with that technique to distinguish the different ores from the different mines. So that for us was very very important, because with that on mind, we will figure out in the next slides how we can now see where the slags came from on these different mines are associated with where they are bringing the ores to the smelting part. So well, uh, also on the other hand, as I told you, my family came from this little town that they still doing smelting today, Santa Clara del Cobre, and we work with a master craftsman, Don Antonio Pureco, and we record and work with them doing the centrada, that it's the traditional name for the type of smelting that it's still doing today every week in Santa Clara del Cobre. It's a traditional process that we definitely think that came from pre-Hispanic times. And as we can see on these different slides, here we can see Don Antonio preparing the centrada, that it's a pit covered with ash. Ash makes the mold for the copper smelting. And here are they call the canyons for the wind blowers. When I was a kid, it's one of the fun things that we did back on those days when I was a kid, doing the furnace. Today they use electric furnaces, but back on those days, the kids, we are that that human power to blow the furnaces. Uh, and then, well, they cover it. They with all the fuel, a lot of charcoal. They use pine charcoal. It's better for them for the heat. And then, well, they put the fire. They start to smelting, and now in a couple of hours, you can see how the copper is smelt, and then they wait for them to get a little bit harder, and then take it out, hammer it, and cut it, hammer it in 6 different pieces. This one is a 200 kilo ingot, and with this they split it in these 6 parts, and with one of these each part every week they make a pot. So every week they do that. So every week they do 6 different copper pots on this traditional workshop. So going back on the time again, the copper miners in West Mexico, we know in Cutsian is one of the mines that I show in the first slides. And back with the Spanish shales that we we know that they leave 20 smelters before the Spanish arrive, and every smelt using a blowpipe because there doesn't exist the other blowers. They blow through pipes to smelt a copper ingot, and well, there are the sizes of it. And in 20 days, every smelter can produce one ingot. So the production was very, very, very small. And this is one of the biggest mines. And there are only 3 big mines in pre-Hispanic times that we know. So the production was not big. We can see here in the codexes different ways that they are blowing and smelting the copper, like here or here, or we found some ingots in these Tierra Caliente lands. But also one of the important things that we are looking at was the slag, because the production of copper, you have to divide it in two different areas. One is the primary foundation, with the smelting. So this primary smelting, it's exactly this: when you bring it from the mine and then you smelt it and transform the stone into metal, into ingots. And the second smelting process, that it's when you, from an ingot, you produce the jewelry. So there are totally different persons that are making those things. One, as I told my students, one is like, you imagine like a very, like the people that are doing metal work, like Pittsburgh Steelers, I always say to them, and the other are the Cartier jewelerists. So probably are so different persons that are involved in these things. So it's very important, the slag production from the primary smelting, and we've been able to find out huge sites with a lot of slag, like these ones that we saw here around Santa Clara del Cobre town. And actually, these slags have their own Purépecha name called querendas, uh, in the language of the people from Michoacan. So with the querendas, or with the slags, we also analyze it by leaves, and with leaves, so we can find out where slags been associated with the mines. So for us, that's a major thing, because now being able to know that even from pre-Hispanic times, but more in colonial times, so people are mining the copper in the Tierra Caliente area, that it's a very hot land, it's a very difficult land, there's not a lot of fuel to make charcoal. And then they are taking the ores and moving to different sites where they've been able to access to the charcoal, to the fuel for the smelting process. So now we know that with different sites, which sites were connected in this first network to the mines. So that's, for us, was a major thing that we will find out with this kind of analysis. So now we know that some of the slags in some sites come from the mine of Bastan, other ones came from Iramuco, and other ones came from the area of Inguaran mines. So it was very important, this, for us. Uh, so going into the production areas, The production areas, they are very, very restricted to certain areas in West Mexico. I have this point here of Paquimé, but we will talk about later. So I think there was some production in northern Mexico, and I will argue why. And then there's a lot of different sites when we found crucibles like these in the site that we excavated in the heartland of West Mexico, like this site called Copandarillo. But also we found in El Llano, even in the site that I was just walking or working last week, associated to the La Mina de la Verde, it's also another site of production. So there's a lot of things now that we can find, but the things that we are looking for are crucibles, some slags, because there are different kind of slags. There are these slab slags or these round slags. Uh, and there was these production areas in pre-Hispanic times are more into the hotlands and are very small production areas. But when the Spanish arrives, everything changed and they switched to a big production areas, and they move most of the ores from the mines in the south part of West Mexico, in the Michoacan area, to the big production areas in the areas with the pine forest are like Santa Clara del Cobre. So on that, only to you to imagine the massive production that starts in the colonial times. This is a football field, soccer football field for kids. It's not a big one, it's not a regular professional one, but it's for kids, but it's pretty big. All of these mountains are only slags. So all of these are other mountains of slags in another school or in front of a little church, in a little chapel in a different town. So the production in colonial times was so big, so big, and was associated with different things. First of all, for coinage, because they are using for alloy, for silver, for instance, for casting weapons, for cannons, for muskets, and different things. And there's a lot of work done, for instance, like in southwestern states about these first Spanish entries with a lot of copper coming from West Mexico. Actually, we are collaborating with some colleagues in New Mexico and Arizona on that project, and with for ships. So it was very important for the crown to have this control. And in the 17th century, they took off all the control of the mines and the smelting centers, and they concentrated the production of the mine in a royal mine in Inguaran and put the royal forgery in Santa Clara del Cobre. So that they try to control this production in early colonial times. So with that also we are start doing this, as I told you, these copper networks into the southwest, these first things. And now we can see here the three big mines that we know was production in the pre-Hispanic time. And with the GIS, we put an algorithm they calculated the easiest way to move from one point to another. So we put the sites of the mines and going to Pátzcuaro, that was the biggest city in days, and Sinjunsan was the capital of the Purepecha Empire. And they draw these lines, and also then we put the important archaeological sites from those days, and it was very impressive because This site, Itziprátzico, it's one of the production sites. Cujucato was another. Canícuaro was another. Aguasarca was another. So there was a big control for the Tarascan Empire in a little bit early than the Spaniards arrived. And also, we do some, well, there was some analysis of how people can walk with a thumb line and how much then can carry on. And well, they can do even 20 miles in a single day with a big transport of 120, 30 pounds. So it was so important. And here are some codex from West Mexico about the thumb lines, and they are carrying access here, or this image of the early 20th century, this photograph of a mecapalero, as the name. They're carrying pots in the lake of Pátzcuaro. But talking with the people till the 70s, even into the 80s of the last century, so 40 years ago, these persons still doing this in the area. So there are families that they are carrying on all the goods from the Tierra Caliente all the way to the coast, to the big cities in the inland. So this is another, it's another thing that we have to be thinking. So that we now we have this big idea of how copper was producing. And then there's like three big technologies that we need to figure out for the second part of the copper and metal work in West Mexico. First is the hammer. Those are images from Santa Clara del Cobre. There's how they cut the ingot in by hand, and then there's another crew in another workshop, and they are doing plates, hammering with these hammers and pliers and everything. But it's another talk because it's incredible. All of the materials, everything was doing by themselves. So they don't buy anything. So they do all the tools and everything that they use in the workshops, in another workshops associated, specialize in doing the hammers and everything. So nothing came from Walmart or another hardware store at all. So and then here there's some different pallets that was putting in museums in South America. This came from Ecuador, I think, and they said how they think that they are hammering the gold sheets. Of course, gold is so much softer than copper. So when I show this to my friends in Santa Clara, they laugh because they know that you cannot do that at all. But well, it's what they're thinking. The other thing is the mold, and this came from the Florentino Codex. And always I thought that this could not be possible to do this. But then looking in some collections in museums here, we found these molds for access. There was miscatalogue for a lot of years, but these are for pliers and for access. Here we saw, and then when I go, because I go regularly also to do this work in South America because all the relationships. So I have some colleagues over there, and we work in Ecuador for for a season, and we found out that they have exactly the same mold in Ecuador. It's another thing that tell us about these connections of this transference of knowledge and technology from South America to West Mexico, to Mesoamerica. And then also there's the lost wax, and well, this is with contemporary jewelers from Michoacan, that how they do this. So the main thing is they do the mold on wax. So here are like a different adornments, but you can cast a bell, and then you put it in, they call it a tree. So there are like a lot of different bells could be there. So these different adornments. They put some so sorry, I don't get the English word for that. And then they cook it, and then they put the metal inside, and then move it, spin it very rapidly, and then you will find and have the objects cast. So this is another important thing. So with these three methods, now we will see the materials from west into the southwest. So we will go into the next part of the presentation. Mm, So of course, uh, the majority of the objects and the diversity of the objects are in west part of Mexico, but there are some important points that we will see, and those are the red and the oranges are the most important ones. And with that first analysis on mind, we thought that we will need to change our scope and start to doing some other type of analysis. So we use these ideas for network analysis. So we thought that first was the bulk good networks in the area, then the prestige goods and the information networks start to moving. But with that in mind, first of all, we start to doing with all these big database that we are talking about, uh, simulations to see how the materials were going to put in some different clusters. And here, with the analysis that we do with the bells in all West Mexico and into the Southwest, and this is analysis without a map, so it is only the weight of the objects, of the presence and the diversity of the objects that we found. So with this thing, there's like a big cluster here, but also there are some outliers here. And these outliers are important because this is in Tunsan area, that it's a capital of the Tarascan Empire, and was a super important metallurgic city in Mexico that we will see. But also there are some places in Tierra Caliente of Michoacan and Nayarit that also get out of from the cluster. And here we'll have two different sites from Gila Pueblo and Cherry Creek that we're also gonna see that have their own thing going on. Of course, I need more analysis on these, but I will present as far as we know now. Uh, so in the second part of this big network analysis, we use, as I told you, these 5,400 metal objects, and we analyzed 132 sites. And with this analysis, we tried to do lines to represent the connections between sites with similar objects, and then the size of the circle was the number of objects that we found. Of course, when we found out first in the computer, we didn't understand anything because was this big mess. But then we're still working, and then we make a prioritization of the distance between the sites and the first available object similar object with a network. And with this, we can make these very, 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 very different network. One of the important things here is we saw that there's an integrated networks that comes from West Mexico and then goes into the Southwest. Uh, of course, and we will analyze this a detail a little bit more. But the first thing I want to keep in mind is that we have this big integrated network that goes all the way to this area. We also have another project, Nation DNA, and it's very, very similar. So the distribution that we have with the DNA so this is very interesting. And then there are some connections that goes into the Southwest, but these connections go through the area of southern Sonora, northern Sinaloa, and goes directly to the area of the Casas Grandes region, and then into the Southwest. But that's not simply as that. We will analyze it a little bit more with detail. But keep that in mind. Okay, first of all, the beginning of the copper network. The earliest sites that we thought that they have metalwork came from the coast of Jalisco and Michoacan and Nayarit. Of course, no any surprise on that. But as I told you, the most stronger evidence come after 900. So people like J. Charles Kelly uh, start to develop this network that works from the Aztlan tradition, this early Aztlan trade system, as he called it, with the Casas Grandes Valley as an important center, and then these sites in Durango into the in the inland, and then well these other sites. But we will, of course, I think Charles Kelly have this great idea, very, very well developed, but of course, he didn't have the data that we have now. So now we can refine that a lot. So this will be the same model that was presented by J. Charles Kelly, but now in the with the network analysis that we made. So the time frame before 900 to the 1300s, with the Aztlan tradition uprise, it's how we saw the network. So the network has big hubs in the hot land in the Terra Caliente where I work, and there's with all these production sites that we now and we have dated, and then we have another big hub here in the Sayula area, but with connections, of course, to the coast. But the interesting thing, well, let me see. And then there's another sites like Teul, the González Ortega, Amapa, the site in Durango called La Ferrería or Schroeder site. It's more known in the American literature, and Wasabe. And then there's the connections through the Southwest. But one of the interesting things here is, as we can see, the the network was not a coastal network. So the network is more into the inland. Of course, there are some coastal things, but there are a lot of jumps that goes and connects the sites going through the inland and into the area of the coast of West Mexico, but not in the shore of the area. It was one of the biggest surprise that we have when we do the analysis. But that makes sense because the biggest size that we knew later in time was these areas, and these areas with most sites with the production of the materials. So now we have this thing. Other important thing that we found out in this first part of the network with the Aztlan tradition, it was like a very low diversity of metal objects. So as you see here, there are only wires, tweezers, rings, more than 200, bells, a lot of bells, but there are very few objects on this, and we will see in the other stage of this network that will be super different. So the variability is very small. On the other important thing in this network, it's the forms. The forms in the bells are more, a lot of those. One type C or the type 1A. These are these globular or these periform bells, all casted by lost wax, and well, there the sides are. So they are very small, and mostly all of the objects are cast in copper. So, but one of the first things that makes rethink this model as an easy model that goes from the west coast of Mexico directly as a production area and everything from every metal found everywhere, as normally everybody says, every metal come from West Mexico. Now we know that there are some different objects like these open work air plugs, air flares, like these that have a very distribution, a very strong distribution in certain areas, and that makes us think a lot in how this could be working in these networks. So the network was only uh, moving objects into the network, or the network was moving people, as we are seeing in the DNA now, that have the knowledge and they could cast or do some secondary smelting in different places. Because of course, to do primary smelting, you need a copper, so you have to do it on where the copper mines are. And then there's a totally different process, but the people can move and can do these little workshops or start doing things that are not present in different places. And that's one of the hypotheses that we have now. And well, this is one of the examples that we have. Of course, there are these other objects that we found, for instance, into the inland in what today is the state of Durango, where I work for more than 10 years. And I recorded a lot of different metal objects. And also over there, we have unique objects that we don't have in any other place. Like this plaque, for instance, doesn't exist in any other place. Chains like this, and this came from archaeological excavations. So, so we need to rethink a lot of how this network was integrated, not only for moving objects, but also for moving people that have the knowledge to make the objects in different places. So this is things from the La Ferreria Shoulder site and Molino site. Napoleon site, all are in the Guadiana Valley area in the Durango area. But going into the southwest in this time, the earliest sites that we have recorded with evidence of copper into the southwest are Snaketown, Gatling, Pueblo Alto, Los Hornos, Bell Ruin, Cameron Creek, Mattox, and Pueblo Alto. Sorry, Pueblo Alto was repeated. And I put it here. This is very important because this is between 900 and 1300s, and that's before Paquimé became a major center in the Chihuahua, northern Chihuahua area. So we have one area in the Hohokam, and these are the metal objects found in the Snake Town. there are these 28 bells found in the floor of house 86G, sorry, in the Zacatón phase. So it's before Paquimé, it's totally in where starting the Aztlan expansion starts. So that is a very strong thing to presume that all this Aztlan tradition goes all the way into the north, into the Hohokam area, into Snake Town. Uh, it's interesting that they're done some analysis, and I hope will be new analysis on that in the future. And they think that they didn't come from Central America. It's what the literature says, but I don't know exactly why they are arguing that. But if you see in the typologies are these piriform are very, very, very well spreaded everywhere in West Mexico on those days. Also, there are these ancient pueblo like Pueblo Alto that contains, these big sites in Chaco area. And there are these bells found into the plaza, and well, different areas were found here. So also the ancient Pueblo areas were involved in this network. Or the most important, and Christopher Adams also works in the Mimbres area. And I don't know if he's in the audience. I think he's in the audience today. They found a lot of different other things, and now they have a great work into the Mimbres copper archaeological work. And now we discussed that in a conference a couple of years probably ago, that there's probably in the Mimbres area also places where could be some production in for copper with native copper nuggets in that area. And of course, well, Mathock, Cameron Creek. So there are member sites that have a lot of these objects. So this for me is very important because, and I will talk this a little bit with another detail, but that shows us that the Southwest was totally integrated into the Aztlan expansion network traditions. So with these copper belts, we also have another work in the same project with Macos that was published a couple of years ago in Arizona Press. But in terms of the copper, I think it's one of the strongest things that we start to think about, and this integration between networks and without Paquimé as a major distribution center. Another super important type is these bells called the type 185 that was founded a lot in West Mexico. And we know that there's probably a production center of this type of bells in the Tepalcatepec area river that we found in this area, but we found it in different places, all the way to Wucoque in Wupatque in northern Arizona, and over here is reported one of these bells. So this is the farther north type of bells with a Tlaloc face on it. So it's one of the most important objects in this network that goes farther north, with definitely with a production in this West Mexico area, or people that have the knowledge to move in this network as we talk about that. Also, in the side of of Sonora, there is the Trinchera site a little bit later on time, and now we're going to change a bit. But also in Trinchera site, recently were found these Tlaloc face bells, like the ones that are found in Bukkake in Arizona. So these tell us about this big network that we haven't. So, but now Paquimé will show, and everything will change. And but one of the things that I want also to mention, it's all these are all the metallic objects that we found, that we have recorded in our database in the Southwest. And you can see everything, mostly everything, are bells. So this is a very important thing. So the objects that are moving in the network are mostly bells. Even there are a lot of other different objects we will see. The bells are the ones that are more important. They are moving into this intense network that we will see here, And I have the opportunity to work at the Arizona State Museum to analyze the collections and see the bells over there in Tucson at UFA. Another important thing that we found out with these bells are analyzing the context where the bells were found are non-funerary or funerary. So the bells in the Southwest mostly are in the non-funerary deposits. And the bells in West Mexico are mostly in funerary contexts. So this is another very interesting thing. So objects that moves in these networks doesn't have the same value or the same meaning to different societies. So societies uses differently those materials. It's very clear here that in West Mexico are totally associated with the burials, mostly, and some rituals, and into the Southwest, most of the deposits are founded in offerings, non-funerary offerings, and other types of catches. So that's another important thing that we found in this work. But then when Paquimé shows, and I invite everybody to go to Paquimé. All the people that didn't go to Paquimé and are in this meeting, please go. It's a incredible, unique site in northern Mexico, northern Chihuahua, very close to Tucson. You can drive easily over there. And well, Paquimé was a very important city. They have these Pueblo type architecture with compounds or 3 and 4 stories, and have a lot of different objects from everywhere. And it's one of the places that's supposed to be very close related to Mesoamerica. Now we have some papers doing on DNA on Paquimé, and now we know that that there are more local things. So, but well, it's a very incredible thing. But now you can see, look at the difference. Now the change work, and look all the objects, all the different type of objects that are present in Paquimé. A big difference. We have a lot of different objects, but from these 688 objects found in Paquimé, there are some particular objects, and these 96% of those are for ornato things. And then we can see, for instance, we have these bells, this turtle bell, that's supposed to be the same as the ones are found in Michoacan and in West Mexico, but you can see the Michoacan ones are very different. And there is the same idea, but the one, it's very different than the other ones found in different places. Other important things are, of course, the discs. There's a lot of copper copper disc beads found, some conic timbers. This vessel, it's unique also. There's no other word that this exists. It's a sheet of copper encrusted with turquoise. So, but it doesn't exist anywhere else. So it has to be done only in Paquimé. Well, we have these needle wires, this macaw mask, also anywhere else. And this axe is incredible. This axe is made by a two-piece mold, and it's a grouped axe. And this type of axe only exists in Paquimé. Any other place in America exists, casted in metal. So it's a replica of the stone grub axe, but in metal, with this technique. So this is telling us also with this that in the unit 8 of Paquimé was found a lot of ore, right, malachite found, but also, and you can see here, are 23.5 kilos. It's like 50 pounds, no, more or less, of copper ore found over there. And there are these nuggets, drill nuggets, and there are sprues. So there's a lot of things that tells us that that there are this possibility of casting in Paquimé, the secondary analysis. So as I told, Christopher Adams also saw these possibilities in Mimbre. So that's really exciting for me. But what happens in the south at this time with Paquimé start here and everything crashed because Paquimé gets all this diversity of objects, but they didn't integrate it into the network, only the bells in the rest of the Southwest. But what happens in the South at those times? Exactly in the 1350s, it's the apogee of the metal work in West Mexico, and it's where everybody was thinking that all this metal was doing in those areas, but in those days. But what we know now with the analysis of what I call it the Imperial Tarascan style in metallurgy, is like they broke the network in the around the 400. They totally broke the network, and they still doing things up in the north with not with other type of objects, probably recycling objects or getting into a little bit of ingots of everything, but mostly of the objects. And there's some images here of air plugs, uh, different things, pliers, everything here. And then Insunsan became the capital of this, and they start making all of these different kind of things. You know, these lip plugs. They started doing this welding the objects into the metal. It's another technique that was new. A lot of alloys, a lot of gold, a lot of silver, a lot of copper, arsen. How to say that? It's tin and copper alloy, bronze, and arsenic bronzes. So you can see the diversity of a lot of things founded here, or these gold sheets, air plugs, different things, or this incredible disc that was found here. There's one in the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles, and this is found here in Michoacan. So these are another thing, another network, and this doesn't go. So as a final remarks, to have some time for the Q&A, the final remarks that I want to take from this talk, from this around an hour of talking, it's first of all, it's a rapid arrival of metallic artifacts into the Southwest, and it's important. It's pre-Middle Paquimé period. So the Southwest was integrated into the networks of Mesoamerica when the Aztlan tradition rises in the 900s. So that's, for me, it's one of the major things that we need to set. In West Mexico, we found a high diversity of objects, of artifacts, mostly came from funerary contexts. There are big production centers. There are very well integrated networks, and now we are trying to figure out if there are different networks for different objects, or there's one big network where a lot of objects were moving, and this is the analysis that now we are doing these days, and we'll try to present it in the next SAAs meeting in San Francisco next year. And then the Tarascan Empire broke the old copper network. So, and this changed everything. And into the Southwest, there are almost exclusively bells. The majority came from non-funerary context, but also there's a well-integrated copper network. This is very important. There are a few types moving over there. There's a few type of bells, this 1A, 1C type of bells that we presented, but it's very well integrated, and there's no major point for distribution until Paquimé arrives. But Paquimé, it's a unique thing. Paquimé, it's a great diversity of objects. They are doing their own objects, I'm pretty sure of that. And as I said, probably it's a secondary production center for the consumption of the city and the little surroundings, but not taking this, putting into the network also into the Southwest. So for me, that's the important thing. So first of all, we have a very integrated network. Everything was moving, but then later in the days when the big major centers appears, these centers break the network instead that they encourage the network. Probably it's a contradictory thing that, but it's what the data says. And well, thank you very much. And I'm open for the Q&A.
All right, thank you. Wow, that was fascinating. Thank you very much. So everybody knows that Jose Luis has graciously offered to stay a little bit later as necessary. I know we're scheduled to end at 8:30, and we're going to get to as many, hopefully all of the questions that are being raised. But before we start sharing our audience questions and comments with Jose Luis, I'd like to ask Al Dart to give you some information about Old Pueblo's mission and activities. Al?
Again, Mitch. You see our mission here is basically public outreach as well as preservation and education regarding archaeology and traditional cultures. Some ways that we introduce or that we implement our mission here, let me expand. We do a lot of educational tours to archaeological sites, sometimes to museums. Some of the ones we have coming up here are on September 22nd, which is the autumn equinox. I'll be leading a tour to the Los Morteros Hohokam village site in Marana, Arizona, and the Picture Rocks petroglyph site, which is technically outside of Marana in Pima County. At the Picture Rocks site, there is a Sundagger calendar glyph there that you can see if we have a sunny day on that tour. We do still have some openings for that tour. The September 27th tour to Dragoon Springs, Stage Station, and the Cochise Howard Treaty sites. That one and the one on November 2nd are both filled already, so we do have a waiting list for those. But we also have some coming up later on here. So if you're interested in these, take a look at Old Pueblo's website. It's oldpueblo.org, and just scroll down to the events section. You can see all of the listings, the tours and other activities we have coming up. We offer classes and workshop. We have a couple scheduled over the next couple of months here. Our next arrowhead making and flint knapping course with flint knapper Sam Greenleaf will be on October 4th to Saturday. Apparently I didn't update my slide here, but that's the date for it. And I'll be offering a course, an online course on the Hohokam culture of Southern Arizona, starting on September 3rd. It'll be on Wednesday evenings from 6:30 to 8:30, 14 sessions going through December 10. We do have other online presence. We put out an electronic newsletter called Old Pueblo Archaeology. It's actually a bulletin called Old Pueblo Archaeology. And this one comes out quarterly. We usually have 1 or 2 major articles in each one, plus they list a lot of our upcoming events. The next one will be coming out probably towards the end of this month. One of the main things we do online anymore is to offer email announcements of upcoming activities in the Southwest. And we put these out twice a month, usually on the first of the month, sometimes in the middle of the month before our third Thursday program. And these list activities of many different organizations. It's not just Old Pueblo Archaeology Center. So if you're not on that list already, you can get onto it by going to our website and scrolling down to the subscribe cell there and putting in your name and email address to get onto our emailing list. This was tonight's presentation, Copper Networks in the Southwest. Our next one in September would be The Origins of Cats in the America by Dr. Martin Welker of the Arizona State Museum and the University of Arizona. And I'm sure that'll be a really fascinating presentation. The main thing that we spend our money on is our children's education program. We have a lot of outreach programs for schools. We have a simulated archaeological dig set up at our facility in Tucson, where we bring whole classrooms of kids in to teach them about archaeological methods, archaeological interpretation, and the scientific method. So we really can use a lot of donations, and this is what most of our membership support goes to as well, is supporting our children's education program. So we do encourage you to make donations to Old Pueblo. So we're kind of passing the hat figuratively tonight, asking for donations, asking you to become members if you're not members already. And you can find information on that by going to our website, oldpueblo.org. So in the early part of the chat this evening, I put in this list of links you can click on in the chat to open them up to get to various places at Old Pueblo's website. So with that, thank you for listening, and let's go back to our Q&A.
All right, thank you. All right, Jose Luis, let's get to it. There's a question. There's a crescent in an early slide. And the question was, is that an ornament similar to what the Hopewell had?
It's talking about the crescent-shaped one.
I didn't share it. It's an early slide. It's an ornament. Yeah, on Hopewell. I'm not sure which one we are talking about, but I think yes, mostly are ornaments. So I'm pretty sure that yes, that yes will be.
All right, thank you. All right, some of these we may have answered in part, but let's go through. Any evidence turn up yet of copper smelting in southern New Mexico, perhaps in Luna County?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the evidence of furnace for smelting in archaeology are very rare. Normally, there are some present here in West Mexico, some present in different places. Actually, there's no one in Paquimé, for instance, and there's no one into the Southwest. And that's why everybody was thinking that probably there was no smelting in those areas. But if you goes with in traditional workshops, you don't need a big smelting oven for a secondary smelting, because you're smelting tiny parts of metal where to do the jewelry and everything. So you probably need more kind of a crucible. So probably we need to think out the box and look for different things in archaeology to try to find out those little production centers.
Thank you. You spoke about slag. Is slag toxic?
Well, it's a great question. We have another project that I, of course, not present today, but exactly about the toxicity of the mining production. The slag, it's not that toxic, but it it has a very great impact into the ecosystems where these slags are. There are no growing of a lot of species in this area, so they are not. But the important thing here is we work in these pre-Hispanic and early colonial times sites of smelting sites in West Mexico, one called Jicalan, and we do some analysis on the soil, but also on the maize leaves that they grow in that area. And the soil, of course, but the most impressive thing was in the leaves of the maize. They were very, very super high in metals. So it's very toxic. And we are talking that there are more than around 400 years of no smelting in that site. So at least these 400 years, and you still have this contamination of heavy metals in the leaves of the maize.
All right. Jose Luis, do you have any idea why the charcoal wasn't transported to the ore instead of the ore to the charcoal production area?
Well, that's another good question. The important thing is, like, for smelting 1 kilo of ore, you need 4 kilos of charcoal. So it's like 1/4, 1/3. It depends on the ore, but it's 1 to 3, 1 to 4. So it's more profitable. It's more easy to transport 1 kilo to the other place instead to transport 4 kilos to the mines. Actually, if we remember all the industrial centers happens in the world, they are where the fuel is, not where the mines are. So all these mineral charcoal was the places where all these big furnace for steel smelting were made, not where the iron was found. So it's easier to move the ore than to move the fuel for the process. So that happens everywhere.
Yeah, you might mention too that to get 3 to 4 kilos of charcoal, how much actual timber do you need for that?
Exactly.
A lot of wood to do that.
And that's very important now, because that's why I mentioned very briefly, but the Tierra Caliente mines, as you see in the slides, it's a very dry place. It's very dry. There are no big trees, and there's a very not a big possibility for doing some charcoal. So the Spanish moved the areas for these areas for big production, for this mass production of metal work, into the areas where are a lot of water, because you also need water for the ore, but with a lot of pine trees. So yeah.
All right, another question. Why do you think bells were in such great demand? And why bells?
I don't know. I don't know. It's the honest answer. It's uh it's very difficult to say. We know that bells, the rattling of the bells, the sound of the bells, was associated with a lot of Native American groups all around the Americas. They're related to the rain, to the water, to make it happen. No, another thing, the turtles, the frogs that we saw. There are animals that are always in the midst and in the vision of a lot of Native American communities. So of course I thought that that's a major thing, but also the metal, it's appealing, the shining, the the sound, even the smell. It's very particular. So there is no easy answer to that, but of course something happens over there associated to the dances, associated to the rituals of death, etc. So
Thank you. Questioner said she would love to go to Paquimé, but you're being challenged here. She's suggesting that it began to develop earlier than that, before 1300.
sorry, I didn't catch you well, Mitch.
Ah, one of the questioners thinks that Paquimé began to develop earlier than maybe you suggested, possibly before 1300.
Oh, well, Paquimé, now there's a lot of different works that suggest that the medieval period starts around 1300s. Now it's difficult to think that it's later than that, the medieval period, but it exists the old period in Paquimé. And in the old period, there are only two pieces of copper, and there are tinklers, no bells in Paquimé. And it's another very important thing because it says that in the early part of the network, Paquimé, or not Paquimé itself, but the Casas Grandes area, another sites like Convento site or another sites, were not so integrated into the consumption of different metal objects. That's why I think because I saw in another question that also I don't put like a lot of significance in Paquimé. In the other hand, I think Paquimé is the major significance for the copper uh, consumption into the northern in northern Mexico and going into the southwest. But it's a game changer, I think, the rise of Paquimé.
Right. Another question. Has anyone looked into where all the mined Great Lakes copper went?
Well, I don't know. I really never study uh, the Great Lakes native copper. Of course, I visit some museums like in Chicago or in different places where you can saw those things, but I think it's a total different develop of the using of metalwork, and mostly, if I understand well, is called hammer, and it's a totally different technique, and the copper, it's native copper that it's in the surface, you don't have to mine it, so the transformation and the process is quite
Yeah,
different.
it's my understanding that the Great Lakes area copper extended mostly through the Mississippian cultures in pre-contact times. So that would be in the eastern US.
Yes.
Hi, we have a comment here from one of our neighbors. I'm watching this in Canada. and wanted to comment that your information that you presented is fascinating. So thank you. Another comment says, love the turtles. They were popular in the southeastern U.S. as well. Any comment on that?
Sorry again, I didn't get you well.
A comment about the turtles, saying that
turtles.
the turtles, tortugas, were also popular in the southeastern U.S. as well.
Yes, absolutely. As I was mentioned, turtles here in Mexico are super important in the way of view of the different cultures here, and there are a lot of associated with the rain season, and also they are very associated to the copper smithing. For instance, one of the myths in the Hikalan Codex that we have here, that it's a codex for a group of copper smelters from here in West Mexico. They arrive riding turtles from the east to become this town of smelters. So the turtles are deeply associated with this here too.
Very interesting. Another comment, I like the skewer. I'd call it a double-pointed awl.
Yeah, well, Charles Di Peso, I'm not an English native speaker, as it's evidently, but Charles Di Peso, that it's the person that excavated Paquimé, have a very peculiar way to name a lot of the things. And well, yeah, he called it like that. And yes, I'm agree. It could be like a double, another different name of the object. Sorry, I lost that. But also he think that could be used as a nose adornment. I don't know.
All right. Comment just to point out, the macaw representation has also been found in Illinois.
Wow. Yeah, well, I would love to see that. Yeah, because they are very in West Mexico or in another place in the Southwest. I never saw one like that it's in this Smithsonian that little mask.
Right. You mentioned Christopher Adams, and he's texting, chatting with us, telling, great talk, José Punzo. That's from Chris Adams.
We need to. I hope to see you soon and talk a lot of copper things.
All right, Eric. Forgive me, Eric. Is it Chait, or I believe it is? Says, thank you, Dr. Díaz, for such an interesting presentation, fact-filled with good explanations and visuals. It kept my interest the whole time. Lots of new information that I was not aware of. And goes on to thank Al, myself, and Old Pueblo Archaeology Center. Thank you very much, Eric. Very kind of you. Let's see. And we're now seeing, I have a drawing of it, and in my Illinois Copper Artifact Resource Manual, that's from Monette, I believe, Bebo Reinhardt, is telling us that she's a drawing of, I believe, the macaw in her Illinois Copper Artifact Resource Manual.
Okay.
And she's thanking you and for this wonderful presentation. And I think it's now 8:40. It's getting late in Michoacan. So I believe we have, let me see if we had any last second questions. And I think that has concluded our questions and comments review. So at this point, just a couple quick things. Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but this webinar should be available on YouTube in a few weeks. Is that correct?
I hope to have it posted on our YouTube channel this weekend.
All right. Wow. Fantastic. Get to watch it again, folks. On behalf of Old Pueblo Archaeology Center, I'd like to thank our guest speaker, El Estimado, Dr. José Luis Punzo Díaz, for sharing with us this evening. We also like to thank all of you in our audience for joining us tonight. Please consider making a donation to support Old Pueblo's efforts to educate children and adults about archaeology, history, and cultures through programs like this one. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Thank you all. Buenas noches and good night.
Thank you, Jose Luis. Thank you, Mitch.
Muchas
Thank you, everyone.
gracias. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.